I made the investment, I worked with my IT counterparts, they deploy the thing. Then I go and check and it's not working.
Oh, they made me accountable. And I said, no, actually, it's because they trust you.
I've spoken with CISOs around the world in every vertical market and every geography, and we're all battling the same kinds of issues. I remember a conversation I had with about 30 LATAM banking CISOs in Costa Rica, and they were regarding the challenge of regulations and the lack of regulations in some of those countries and how much that hampers their abilities. They're almost jealous of the US and all the regulations.
Right. Don't make your users your biggest hackers, that they have to get around your control to do their job.
600 million endpoints are running this stack inside. People don't know that. Even if you stick a new hard drive in there, it's utterly useless.
We had caught a guy that the RSA token was sitting on his desk with a webcam on it, so his subcontractors could dial in and get his two factors and do things. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Cooking with CISOs. I'm Rick Doten, the host. I am a former CISO, a current security advisor, and AI researcher. And today we have my friend Harold. Harold, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Harold Rivas. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Look great forward to it. I've been a CISO 5 times over. Well, it's an exciting opportunity. First time cooking with CISOs.
Okay. Yeah, great. So what are we cooking today?
We're cooking shrimp scampi.
Shrimp scampi, definitely a crowd favorite. Why did you choose this recipe for today?
I would say probably about 80% of what we eat at home is Italian, but it also connects me back to my Brooklyn Italian neighborhood roots.
Oh, even better. My mother is full Italian, and so yeah, we grew up with it. We've been talking about that because a lot of us in this room have Italian background.
Exactly.
And so you have an interesting role because you are the CISO of a product company. Explain how you kind of got into that role, and then also kind of the unique factors of being one in a product company.
Yeah, it is unusual, right? I still consider myself a financial services CISO through and through. The bulk of my career, about 20 years of my 30 years experience, is really dedicated to highly regulated environments. However, in a product context, there's some amazing perks, not least of which is then the entire company knows what you do. Right? You're not selling the purpose of cybersecurity. People understand it at their core. It's the entire purpose of the organization. So that's the real benefit. But being in a product-centered organization also creates some challenges, right?
And that's an interesting one that we'll talk about a little bit. How was your origin story? At our age, probably in the 90s, it found you. You didn't find it. What's your origin story of getting in security?
This is late 90s.
Yep.
And I realized that information security was going to be a specialized thing. I had this narrative in my mind. I thought the world's going to be divided into those people that really understand this stuff and those that don't. And I wanted to be one of those people that understand.
Right.
I was at the American Stock Exchange. I had the privilege of growing up in New York City. You spend a lot of time on Wall Street. So that was my early exposure, right? Getting into information security technology. I had a real passion for it. I wanted to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the deeper I went into it, the more I realized there's not a single piece of technology that I like more than another. I want to do all of it.
Right.
So as a function of that, how do I do all technology if I keep going? That led me to information security. That was the only way that I could play with all kinds of technologies while continuing to explore things deeper.
At every aspect of the business and aspect of the business risk and reducing business impacts, and so cybersecurity touches every aspect.
Downtime is no longer a side effect of cyber incidents. It is the outcome attackers are aiming for. When systems are disrupted or wiped, security controls often fail with them. Visibility disappears, access breaks, operations slow or stop. Security has focused heavily on prevention, but prevention alone does not hold up under failure. When software is compromised, control is lost. Resilience, below the operating system, is the missing link in cybersecurity. It's the operational capability that preserves control, even when disruption happens. This is where Absolute is fundamentally different. Absolute is embedded in the firmware of hundreds of millions of devices worldwide. Firmware persistence is built in, not bolted on. Even if a device is re-imaged, reset, or tampered with, Absolute remains present and trusted below the OS. That persistence becomes the foundation for resilience. With Absolute, organizations maintain continuous visibility, enforce trusted access, and automatically restore critical security controls across endpoints and users. This is not about reacting faster after an incident. It is about never losing control in the first place. Absolute brings together endpoint resilience, secure access, and recovery to help organizations limit downtime and protect business continuity. Cyber resilience is no longer optional. It is essential. Absolute. Cyber resilience that stops downtime.
Oh, they made me accountable. And I said, no, actually, it's because they trust you.
We'll get our shrimp bit this here. Okay.
So we can cut some garlic. So you want to select your weapon here, whether you want a chef's knife or a carving knife.
Yeah, I'll do a chef's knife.
Or out to this.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, in Italian families, it's all about cooking. Did you help your parents cooking when you grew up?
I would say I'm often on the receiving end of the cooking.
Okay, so that's the other age. Is like you're not allowed in the kitchen until you get to a certain age.
I do enjoy it. Information security mindset makes you like a really precise kind of person, right? Family is more free-spirited and creative. So that's typical for me. It's between the creative energy and the free spirit. Eventually you get to the free spirit, but I have to go through my process being really precise about things.
So another thing interesting about your role is you're not just a CISO, you're in charge of IT as well.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of my friends that have kind of inherited that CIO role, and they're the CIO or the CISO. I call them labradoodles. How has that been? And was that something that you came into first at this organization, or did you kind of grow into it?
So the organization, when they were looking for a CISO, there was a potential of also running IT. There was the idea that those things are aligned enough that it makes sense to explore one leader to drive them both. And that was a natural evolution for me. It was something that really appealed, the opportunity to drive those outcomes, because I think your own experience probably shows some of the challenges sometimes that happen between the folks that keep uptime going, right? So I think the opportunity as the head of IT, as well as a person who's managing risk, allows me to kind of expand and lean into how do we ensure things like AI are top of mind and we're evolving, even if they bring some risk with our adoption of them. I'm sort of seeing this as maybe where the industry's going, where the lines and the blurring between what a CISO does and what a CIO does start to shift.
I was having a conversation with a friend a few days ago that there was some incident that had nothing to do with him, but everyone called him and say, hey, what happened? Can you do it? And he's like, oh, they made me accountable. And I said, no, actually, it's because they trust you. It's like, because our job is to identify what happened, how did it happen, make it stop, and then eventually make sure it doesn't happen again. And if there's, for instance, something that may be deemed an AI issue, is the chief data officer know anything about how to investigate this? Does the compliance team know how to investigate this? Does the GRC team know how to investigate this? No, we do. So we're the one who's first call.
One of the reasons that I think CISOs can be great overall leaders for technology is that we're the people that are expected to figure out how to break something, way to protect something. Oftentimes, a CISO had to traverse that path, figure out how does this thing work? What are the risks and implications of this particular piece of technology in my organization? And ultimately, you're more effective as leading that area of the business.
Don't make your users your biggest hackers, that they have to get around your controls to do their job. I always talk about my 3 rules of being a CISO is 1, like understand how your business makes money and don't do anything to disrupt it. And then number 2 is don't make your users your biggest hackers, that they have to get around your controls to do their job. And number 3, find your community. Community is so important because we're all in the same fight and we need to work with each other and share information to be able to defend our organization, because any one of us is a weak link makes us all less secure. We're evolving these roles to a CIO, and we've had for 20 years now talk about the role of the CISO and where it reports to. And everyone shakes their fists like, I can't report this CIO because it's a conflict of interest. And then now there's a CIO CISO role. It's like, wait, how do you have a conflict of interest? My perspective is that if you come from the security side, there isn't. If you come from the IT side, there is. What do you think?
It's funny you mentioned that, right? Because I was talking with a colleague who had been challenged with arguing about some of the issues associated with trying to protect something. It might have been a DLP deployment or something like that. And ultimately, the CEO said, well, fine, then you run it. You run the technology. And it was just a way of reducing the friction and saying, look, if you're the person that I'm holding accountable for managing the risk, I'm going to give you all the tools to actually manage the risk.
Right.
And that kind of makes sense, right? Because at that point, you've reduced the friction.
Going back to kind of understanding how the business works and all those things, because we are managing risk to the business. IT risk management, not about protecting IT, it's protecting the business. And frankly, from IT. And so we kind of step in and say, I'm going to make this work and it's going to be reliable so we don't have any business impacts. And I'll make sure it's secure, because that's just underlying what we're always thinking about it.
That's exactly right.
In one point, you have an interesting role because you have both the CIO and CISO role. Two, you're in a product company. But the community that we are part of, some people accept or don't accept a CISO within a product company versus one who's in an organization. Have you been seeing that in some of the communities?
There was an organization I did tons of work with for many, many years, led part of the community. And when I came into a product-oriented organization, they were like, no, we're not quite sure that this really matches anymore. But I think that's doing a disservice to the industry.
I agree.
Because it is an important voice. We are operators at the end of the day. We're trying to protect an organization just like everyone else is, right? So finding a way that we can continue to communicate and continue to have a dialogue with our peers is essential. So I think communities should absolutely incorporate that voice as well. I've spoken with CISOs around the world in every vertical market and every geography, and we're all battling the same kinds of issues.
One of our hosts is my old friend Rick Howard, who was the CSO for Palo Alto for years. And we had talked about this over the years. It's interesting how I'm the same person. I'm now just working for a different company. I have the same skills. And also, I would say you probably have better insight because all of us are your customers. And so you're seeing what trends are happening across industries, across sizes, across maturity levels.
One of the things that I've consistently learned is the challenges are pretty universal. I've spoken with CISOs around the world in every vertical market and every geography, and we're all battling the same kinds of issues, right? Those conversations and the vantage point of perspective from the vendor, I think really lend to the conversation in that we're seeing these play out globally. We're not one vertical, we're seeing all verticals. I remember a conversation I had with about 30 LATAM banking CISOs in Costa Rica. They were regarding the challenge of regulations and the lack of regulations in some of those countries and how much that hampers their abilities. They're almost jealous of the US and all the regulations.
Right. And that's what I found too with my peers who are in non-regulated entities. I don't have a starting point of saying, hey, I need to be, FFIC required or HBO or something. I have to come up with what framework I map it to. And then as you kind of said before, convince the executives, this is the framework I'm going to model after, whether it's ISO or NIST or whatever it might be. And they say, okay, great, because I need something to measure it. You have this viewpoint across all of them. And having been a consultant many years ago, you come from financial services. The FSISAC is very tight, but you don't know what's going on in healthcare. You don't know what's going on in automotive. You don't know what's going on when you're in financial services. And what I found as a consultant is they have a lot of lessons and benefits that would translate over to other industries, but no one ever talks. I think nowadays we have these more broad communities that we get together more, but that was one of the other bifurcations that I thought was a challenge over the years.
It really is. And I think one of the consistent lessons learned is we need to share more. That's the reason community is so important. We can share information. We're all collectively trying to defend an enterprise, an organization against common adversaries. Make sure to salt or always more salt than ever.
Right. Should be salty as the sea, right?
Exactly.
You have some olive oil, you have some butter, you have some garlic, some red pepper, now some black pepper.
Yeah. I think this should be good. I made the investment. I worked with my IT counterparts. They deploy the thing. Then I go and check and it's not working.
One of the things that my friend used to talk about was that he had the advantage of using all of his own tools to protect his organization. I'm sure you do the same thing. And so that also gives more insight for you in supporting communities. So tell me a little about that.
Oh, they look beautiful. Thank you. So yeah, being a CISO at a product organization, many organizations call it customer zero, right? The very first customer. We beat the hell out of our product. We're really on top of it. We get to evaluate, but we also get to contribute to the voice of the customer. What is it that I need? How do I manage this risk with these sets of capabilities? And that's something that drives product roadmaps. I really am a CISO, not only by training, but It's my passion.
Right.
As a CISO at a product company, it's sort of like the ultimate expression of here's a set of challenges. How do I solve these challenges with this set of tools? And that really does create an opportunity to connect at all levels of the organization.
Right.
You get to connect with your product and engineering teams to understand what are they solving for. We get to connect with your marketing partners to make sure that the message lands through the ears of an operator using our tools. That's where it really is intriguing, because so many people, myself included, don't fully understand everything Absolute brings to bear.
In my old organization, we've used you for 15 years, and it is the best thing in the world for remote wiping. Anywhere in the world, if I want it destroyed, I hit a button and it's gone. Other platforms say they do it, and they can do it under certain conditions, but not under any condition you can do it. So what are some of those other breadth of things that you do that you even get to use yourself?
Yeah, so I think one of the age-old challenges that I think operators have is I've made an investment, right? Typical CISO has 70 some odd different technologies that they manage. Part of the challenge is knowing whether or not those things are operational. What's the typical dynamic in any organization? It's I made the investment, I worked with my IT counterparts, they deploy the thing. Then I go and check and it's not working because you have configuration drift. That's a natural thing. In a heavily regulated environment, CISOs are kind of on high alert for making sure that every single asset, because you never know which one's going to get stolen, which one's involved in a fraudulent issue, every single asset's encrypted. How does that work today? In most organizations, it's going out there, running a report, seeing that the report shows X number of devices are still outstanding, go out there, set a ticket, somebody works it independently. All of that stuff creates friction. We'll randomly take somebody during a quarterly meeting and just completely re-image that machine. We do something called persistence. We can define a policy, and that local agent is making determinations about, does this match policy? Is CrowdStrike running the way it should be or not? Is that disk encrypted? All those questions are constantly explored and persisted to ensure it actually matches the desired end state. That's a really important thing so that you can have very high fidelity and confidence in what you actually have in the environment. So I don't worry about that today. We also have the idea of creating an environment that's going to be able to withstand, right? What's required to withstand? Ongoing and consistent patching. So we're able to deploy patches, keep everything absolutely hardened, discover what's going on in the environment, discover shadow IT, apps that have been installed within the environment. We actually implemented a thing inside the company where through the release of what we call Rehydrate, we have the ability to go and completely rebuild that machine from firmware up. So we can reinstall the operating system, we can bring files back. We'll randomly take somebody during a quarterly meeting and just we're going to completely re-image that machine.
To show that it can be done and the timing that it takes to recover from that.
Exactly, and show that from a completely owned device, from a device that's been completely encrypted, you can restore state. We put a lot of emphasis and focus on making sure that we can bring the organization back to life quickly. I like to walk the walk, talk the talk, make sure that the organization absolutely is well rehearsed and understands how we would handle a crisis. We're also a ZTNA shop, so we have capabilities that can control exactly how that device connects to the world. We release something called Comply to Connect. I can ensure that that device matches exactly what I'm expecting before I allow it to touch any resources in the company.
You're not just talking about on the operating system level or even in the hard disk, but you're like at the firmware, and you have like some relationship with some hardware manufacturers to get those hooks in below where a traditional encryption would have been able to affect.
Pretty much every PC I've touched in the last 20 years has had Absolute installed. 600 million endpoints are running this stack inside. People don't know that. So understanding that that capability, that tool is there, already embedded, 28 OEMs that we have all those relationships with, and you could just turn it on and have not only an understanding of where that device is in the world, but the ability to firmware lock, as you were saying, freeze it such that even if you stick a new hard drive in there, it's utterly useless. I can't tell you how many times in financial institutions we'd have a situation where a handful of employees would leave, they take those devices, never return them. You send all kinds of notices. We can do that.
We had caught a guy that the RSA token was sitting on his desk with a webcam on it. One of the things that we've been talking a lot in my community is about what we refer to as overemployment or fraudulent employment. We have employees who are working multiple jobs. I mean, everyone's working from home. And so they say, hey, I got a job here and I accept another job there. And I'm kind of like keeping both going. The second thing is fraudulent employment, where someone is hired and then they kind of outsource it to somebody somewhere else. One of the craziest stories I saw was one of my friends in one of the banks said that we had caught a guy that the RSA token was sitting on his desk with a webcam on it, so his subcontractors could dial in and get his two factors so they could VPN and do things. And so we would identify things by either like remote desktop share through Zoom or Teams, or VPN from another VPN concentrator. I was like, why are we VPNing from a NordVPN concentrator in New York? That makes sense. And so I'm not sure if that's something your community has talked about.
I looked into this as a problem statement within the organization. We see a lot of the IT workers.
Right. Yeah. Trying to come in.
Right. It's really critical. And I would say cybersecurity companies in particular really been focused on that and trying to make sure that they are on top of this risk. This is not an unusual thing for this industry.
Something like you that's embedded in everything, and particularly since you have such core access to the hardware, It would be a perfect place to embed some kind of backdoor.
Exactly. Overemployment is an extension of a much broader problem statement that I think we're all really focused on. The North Korean IT worker as an example, but in financial services, I encountered a situation where there were a variety of almost like orchestrated rings to target the mortgage industry, for example. So that's a real concern that I think we all need to be very aware of as a risk vector. It is a reality that CISOs everywhere need to be focused on. How do we detect it? They've been very creative as actors. We're beyond the screen active, so they don't get locked out of a session. Those were early days, but it's much, much bigger than that. People have used KVM switches. Right?
Yep.
So there's no detectable connection. This is also in the North Korean hack side of the house.
The HDMI cables in between the computers.
Exactly.
But we've already finished. It looks beautiful.
Thank you.
And let's go ahead and take a bite.
I'm going to shrimp too.
Sorry. Shrimp is cooked perfectly.
That was great. Yeah.
How's this the pasta?
Thank you. Learned a little thing.
So simple and so good. And that's the thing about these simple dishes are great. Well, thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate the conversation.
Likewise.
That's a wrap here. I'm Rick Doten, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Cooking with CISOs.